welcome back to Copper Star Precision. Today we've got a great video. I'm going to go over what I think, in my opinion, is the best base class rifle that you can use for NRL22. And I actually put my money where my mouth is, and I have it here in this case. So we're going to visit that at the end of the video, but let me show you how I arrived at my decision. And although you may not agree with me, at least this should give you some framework as to what you're working with when it comes to making that decision on a base class rifle. So I've prepared a presentation here, and we can go right into it. The best base class rifle for NRL22. So let's take a look at the Contenders first. Now, I'm not affiliated with any of these brands. These are kind of what I think is the leading competitive offerings on the market. First would be the CZ457, a rifle which I have a higher spec version of. We have the Tikka T1X. We have the Ruger Precision Rimfire rifle, which is kind of based off of their Ruger Precision rifle centerfire platform, and the Bergara BMR. The Bergara B14 rimfire rifle is a little bit out of the price range, so we'll discuss some of the limitations to the base class in this video. Some things that I'm not considering, something like the Bergara BXR or the Ruger 1022. Obviously, they kind of fit the base class rifle aesthetic. They are semi-automatic though, and in my personal experience, I think you get a little bit more accuracy out of a bolt action rifle, and that's what I prefer to shoot. So I'm going to limit my choices to bolt action rimfire rifles. Not that you say you couldn't use one of these in base class, I'm just not considering them here. There's also the Ruger American, but since it is a bolt action rifle, but since it's pretty much the same footprint as the Ruger Precision, I wanted to throw something else that had a chassis instead of a stock for consideration. So what makes an important decision-making factor when it comes to base class rifles? Really, the biggest limitation is going to be the price. The rifle and the optic for the 2022-2023 season must have below a combined MSRP of less than $1,200. Now that's MSRP, and that MSRP comes from the manufacturer's website. I believe it's of June 1st, which is when the season officially started. So we've had a lot of inflation, prices have been adjusted, so it doesn't matter if you had the rifle a couple years ago or you found it at the local gun store for way cheaper. The price limit is on the MSRP because different markets, different things, prices are all over the place, right? So they have to go after a standard, and that standard is the manufacturer's suggested retail price. So both the optic and the rifle must be less than $1,200. We're going to be spending close to $600 for the rifle, $600 for the scope, and kind of make it a 50-50 split. Accuracy. Obviously, everyone wants the most accurate rifle they can use, but it's going to really depend on ammo and lot testing, and that's really the case with a lot of rimfire. It's not so much that one gun is more inherently accurate than another. It's about finding the right gun ammunition combination that leads to the best accuracy. Barrel length. For me, personally, I think 18-20 inches is the ideal zone. Shorter, you're sacrificing a little bit of velocity. Not that you need it. All the rounds are going to be subsonic anyway. But longer adds a little to no benefit. You get a little bit more weight at the end, which might help with balancing. But you'll have full burn, but not necessarily the bullet won't be propelled the entire length of the barrel. You actually might lose velocity after a certain point. Because the friction of the barrel will actually slow the bullet down before it exits the muzzle. So I find for rimfire, 18 to 20 inches is a sweet spot. My personal opinion, you may have a different opinion. Optic mounting. So we're going to need a canted scope base. If you don't know what that is, essentially imagine you have a flat rail and you have to mount an optic on top of it. You either have to get canted rings so it tilts the rail towards the barrel, or you have to get a scope base that is at a cant. And the reason we do this is because if we want to reach out to longer distances, it's going to help use more of the internal travel of the scope rather than relying solely on the total elevation of the scope. So what that means is that by introducing cant, we're actually taking that out of what we need to use to adjust, and we can use more of the range of the scope. And we'll talk about that in a future video, because I'm also going to cover the best base class scope in a future video. So make sure you stick around for that. Make sure you like and subscribe with notifications enabled for future videos. What else we have to look for? Stock versus chassis. This is kind of a personal preference. I think the chassis also offers more mounting options, more customization, and remember, the MSRP is only for the scope and the optics. Everything else, weights, Arca rails, bag riders, triggers, anything you can think of that's not specifically the rifle or the scope is not included in that budget limit. So we can go crazy, and I think a chassis offers a little bit more versatility when it comes to customization. Adjustability for length of pull and cheek weld. What are the options for adjusting the rifle to fit you? That's kind of important. Are there aftermarket options? Do we have to start hacking into the rifle and building our own cheek riser and that kind of stuff? Magazine capacity. 12 rounds plus is a bonus. I think the standards for rimfire is mostly 10 rounds, but if you have noticed and watched my other videos discussing stage briefs, there are some matches, and usually 1 round per match, that has at least a 12 round stage. So if you don't want to be doing mag changes, having a magazine that can hold more than 12 is a bonus, or if you have the ability to purchase aftermarket options or base plate extensions for your magazines to give you 12 rounds, that can be a bonus. Grip, that's kind of a personal preference, but being able to change the grip to fit you, again, comes to that comfort, that sort of customization. And the trigger. So also a personal preference. The stock triggers on a lot of rifles leave a lot to be desired for the precision sport that we're doing. I like to prefer a much lighter trigger pull than what you would use a 22 rifle for hunting per se. So I mean, hunting triggers are in the probably 3, 4, 5 pound weight in terms of pull weight, whereas some of my competition rifles get down to a pound or less. And I know it's not comfortable for everybody, but just having trigger options for the rifle platform that you're using is a bonus. And we can get into the debate about single versus 2-stage triggers and all that kind of stuff. But usually for accuracy shooting, to avoid any undue influence from you and your trigger pull, which can be corrected with perfect fundamentals, don't get me wrong, but I think a lot of target shooters prefer as light a trigger as they're comfortable with. For me, that's around 1.5 pounds. So I've developed this decision matrix, and what we're going to do is kind of go through all those categories and rank all the different rifles that we have that we're talking about. So let's talk price. So that, like I said, the MSRP is definitely an important thing, and these are the MSRPs from the website. Now the CZ457 has a lot of different variations, a lot of different models. They range in prices. So I think one of the cheapest ones, just a base CZ457, is like $519. They go up to $625 for the kind of the rifles that we're considering in this class, and obviously they go up way further than that. So there are the CZ457 MTR Precision Trainer, this, that, the other thing that can be $1,100, $1,200, $1,500. But if you want to get into the absolute cheapest, the CZ457 probably has the cheapest MSRP offering. Doesn't mean that you can't find one at a local gun store for way cheaper or the street prices, but we have to remember that it's going off of MSRP. So MSRP, CZ wins out there. Accuracy is a big question mark, right? It really depends on ammo, lot testing. There are all different grades of ammo. I don't think different grades are necessarily better than the other. It just provides you probably a tighter tolerance and more stringent manufacturing, which leads to lower standard deviations and more consistent ammo over time. Doesn't mean that if your gun doesn't like a certain ammunition from a certain manufacturer, that buying the most expensive version of the ammunition might help it. You might have to go to a different manufacturer. The big leaders are obviously Lapua, Ely, RWS. In these competition sports, we're not necessarily shooting things like CCI, standard velocity. Not that you're not saying you can't shoot that, but maybe your gun loves it, and maybe it's super accurate, which is great because it's relatively affordable and available. But most of the ammunitions, if you want to get into the more of the precision games, are going to require some of those higher end ammunition manufacturers. Barrel length, the offerings here, the T in parentheses means does it come with a threaded barrel. CZ's all over the place. You can get from 16 to 20 to 24. Some are threaded, some are not. The Tikka is a 20-inch threaded barrel. Ruger is an 18-inch threaded barrel, and Bergara is a little short for my taste at 16.5 inches threaded. Threaded just allows you to add things like barrel tuners, compensators. Not that you necessarily need a compensator for 22 because there's very little recoil, but if you want to add a suppressor, I think shooting 22 suppressed if you live in a free state is a great option. But if we want to tune out barrel harmonics with a tuner, we can discuss that. But having a threaded barrel is important, so you don't have to send it to a gunsmith to go get it threaded, costing you additional money. Let's talk about the octave rails. So the CZ457 and the Tika have what they call a dovetail mount. Basically, the scope rings will clamp directly to that dovetail, or they sell base plates, optics rails and things that clamp onto that dovetail. So I know Area 419 sells one for the CZ457 that has 30 MOA of cant built into it. But the Ruger Rimfire and the Bergara already come with a 30 MOA Picatinny rail mounted on the rifle already from the factory. So it's one less thing you have to buy if you want a canted scope base, and you probably will if you're going to try and push 22 out to further distances. And if you don't understand why that is, we'll definitely get into that into later videos. Stocker chassis. There's 3 stocks in my list, and the Ruger Rimfire is the only one with a chassis. I prefer a chassis for that customization that I was talking about earlier. Adjustability. CZ457, Tika, and Bergara are all going to require extra money to change things like length of pole and cheek weld. So you either have to buy aftermarket cheek welds, you have to buy spacers, you have to buy additional components that don't necessarily come with the rifle, whereas the Ruger Rimfire has a sort of quick release system that can adjust length of pole and your cheek weld position simultaneously. So it's a huge advantage, that's less money you have to spend. Magazines, CZs, I think mine came with a 5, so I had to buy a couple of 10s. They're aftermarket extensions, and those cost more money, but they bring my 10-round magazines to 13-round magazines. Tika, same thing, standard is 10. There's aftermarket extensions available, that's what the AE stands for. Ruger Rimfire comes in rotary magazines in 10, 15, and 25-round varieties, direct from Ruger, which is always good because when you deal with third-party aftermarket stuff, sometimes reliability and feeding becomes an issue. And Bergara also has kind of the same thing as CZ with 5 and 10 rounds with aftermarket parts available. The grip. Most of the CZ457s, unless you get one of the high-end trainer versions, which we're not talking about, has a fixed grip. Pretty difficult to change the way that is. A lot of the stocks are either synthetic or wood, and it'd be very difficult to kind of change that to a personal preference. The Tika does allow interchangeable grips, which is a very interesting feature. So they have a more vertical grip, and I think what you'll find is that a vertical grip is preferred for competitive rifles because it puts your hand in position where you don't wrap your entire hand around the grip. You're actually leaving it to one side and resting your thumb, so you're not torquing the rifle as you grip the rifle. The Ruger Rimfire has the advantage of being, actually the grips are based off an AR platform grip, so there's hundreds and hundreds of grip options. So if you already have like an AR-15 and you love that grip, or if you want a target version AR platform grip, there are plenty available. Yes, it's additional money, but I think you have the absolute run-of-the-mill when it comes to whatever grip makes you more comfortable. And the Bergara is also a fixed grip, so kind of a detriment there. Triggers, aftermarket triggers are always going to be an additional spend. They do sell spring kits, they sell things that can kind of slick up the trigger take up. Some of them are adjustable. But in terms of availability of aftermarket triggers, both the CZ and the Ruger have proprietary trigger mechanisms. The Tika actually shares the same trigger platform as the T3X, which is their centerfire rifle, so there are a little bit more options there. And the Bergara wins out here because it has a Remington 700 footprint trigger, and there are plenty of those from plenty manufacturers because the Remington 700 platform is extremely widespread and used in a lot of rifles, not just rimfire, but centerfire as well. So here's kind of the whole decision matrix, and based on this, where do we go from here? So if you saw all the green in the column, it's probably pretty easy to guess what this rifle is. But I've decided to go with the Ruger Precision Rimfire rifle, and this is the rifle that we're going to be building up on this channel, and we're going to basically take it from base class to world class. So we're going to take this rifle, I'm going to show you all the ins and outs of base class rifle, and we're going to build it up from scratch. We're going to lot test it. We're going to teach you how to mount optics, how to zero optics. This is going to be kind of like our test bed for all the stuff that we're going to do on the channel going forward when it comes to precision rimfire. Of course, I'll still make the course videos and all that kind of stuff, but if someone's not into this game yet and they're interested about what it takes to get into this game and hopefully become successful at this sport, I'm going to show you from the very beginning where you buy the rifle. And I think base class is a affordable way to get into the rifle. We're going to go a little overboard with this. I got some huge plans for crazy doodads and things we can stick on here, and you don't have to do that. I'm going to give you options along the way where you can save money and try and, you know, compete in this sport in an economical fashion. But I'm super excited to bring the Ruger Precision Rimfire to the channel, and I hope you stick around because it's going to be a doozy. So please subscribe, like this video, send me a bunch of comments down below. What are you using? Do you compete in base class, open class? Are you a young gun or air gunner, or are you in the ladies division? Do you agree with my choice? There's a lot of stuff you can read plenty of stuff on the forums about, oh, this rifle's great, this rifle's crap. So do you have any experience with the rifle, or would you have chosen a different rifle and why? So I'd love to hear all those comments down below. I love reading all the comments and growing the channel. So, I mean, I'm excited. It's always fun when you get a new gun, right? So we're gonna see how far we can push this little $600 rifle and see how accurate we can get it. So stay tuned for that, and until next time, get more points.